Hey there, I'm Melanie and I'm your design journey art class expert for watercolor pencils and colored pencils. In this session, we're creating a landscape painting with watercolor pencils. For our landscape illustration, you're going to need watercolor pencils. I'm using the STAEDTLER 24 pack of watercolor pencils here. You're also going to need some watercolor paper. You can use either textured or more smooth paper. Just make sure that it is watercolor paper and that it can handle the water really well. So at first I'm gonna just map out the basic shapes and where they're going to go on our format. And I'm using a light blue watercolor pencil for that. Here are going to be a few mountains. So I'm just going to sketch out roughly how they are going to appear here. I'm just making a very rough sketch right now. This is going to be our bay area of the lake. So here's the basic shape of the lake. And then there's going to be something in the foreground as well. Here are going to be trees and here are going to be more trees. But those are just our very basic shapes right now. I personally love to start with the water and the reflections, so I'm going to do that. And just start by lightly coloring the water. I'm not pressing down very hard. I'm also tilting the colored pencil so it's on its side. So not like this, where we have a very pointed line. I'm using it like that so I can fill more of an area and not have those lines visible later on. Now I'm also mixing in a little bit of a green tone. Now with an eraser, I'm just getting rid of some of the areas or just lightening up them a little bit because there are a few clouds here and I want them to be a little bit more visible. Now that we've colored in all of our water area, I'm just blending all of that with a good amount of water. Don't be hesitant to use a lot of water here. And just splattered it here a little bit. We also have some areas here that are clouds, and I'm using my tissue to remove the paint here so that we have the clouds still visible in the water. Now I'm going to use the lightest green tone and I'm going to start to paint my mountains behind here, and I'm just coloring those in as well. Now I'm using a purple tone to create some shadows at the bottom of my little mountain. This will make it easier to tell them apart later. I also use one of those other green colors. I'm gonna use this green color and going to add this here as well. So this is the mid-tone. And now the same thing, you already know what to do. So now I'm blending some of the mountains. I'm starting to blend them here where the light tones are. And then I'm blending everything below that. And and moving slowly towards the darker areas. So I don't drag the dark pigment into the light area. I just drag the lighter pigment into the darker area, which works better. So here I'm just carefully making this shadow part. And now I'm gonna skip that one and do that one because those aren't touching each other. I'm gonna blend this one as well. So now that our lake is almost dry, I'm going to color all of this and start with the light tone here as well. And you don't have to worry about it too much at this point. This is just the first layer. And it's not completely dry here on the right side, but I actually don't worry about that because there are going to be trees covering this area, so I'm already blending this. Now I'm picking a gray color and I'm just gonna start with the sky now and think about where the clouds are going to be and leave those parts blank. With a blue tone, I'm carefully drawing everything around those clouds, coloring all of that in. And now I'm using the gray tone again, and the clouds are darker at the bottom. They have these shadows here. And I'm darkening them up at the bottom and leaving everything at top blank. Now I'm gonna blend the clouds first. Just gonna add water to them. I'm also blending these two mountains now. Now I'm gonna wait for all of these areas to fully dry before I move on. Now that all of these areas are dry, we are going to move on to this little area. I'm also starting off with this super light shade of this green tone. And here we also have some shadow areas. I'm just adding them in with the green tone and then also with the purple tone. And I'm also starting to map out where our trees here are going to go with the light tone. And now I'm gonna blend all of that. And leave the tree areas alone a little bit. I'm using a lot of water here and we're going to have this watercolor effect later on. So now that all of this is blended, I'm gonna start to darken up the bottom area. Here's going to be the trees in the foreground and I'm gonna leave them out a little bit. And some more over here. And a little bit over there. And I'm gonna darken everything else. I'm being super messy here again because it really doesn't matter because we're going to darken that up a lot. And I'm starting to create the shapes of the trees in the water, over the water here. I'm also going to add a little bit of black here. And now I'm gonna blend all of that. Now I'm gonna make sure that everything is dry before I move on to the next step. So I just used a hair dryer and it's a bit wobbly now, but it doesn't matter. We can just press it later on and it's gonna be straight again. Now that everything's dry, I can go over everything again, darken up everything and then blend it again. It's always easier to go from lighter tones to darker tones and blend everything over and over again than to just put all of the colors there, blend it and realize it's too dark. I'm also adding in certain areas like the reflection here. We have a lot of reflection here in the water and I'm just creating the trees by creating lines like this. And here's more of our mountain and we can see that in the reflection. So I'm coloring all of that in. I'm also going to darken the shadow areas even more by adding in more of the purple, because this is supposed to be a really dark area. And we also have trees here, which is why I'm doing those vertical lines, because that's the directions the trees grow in. And so that we can see them here later on. I'm also going to darken the water just a little bit more, and where there are clouds reflected in the water, I'm going to leave those parts. So now I'm gonna blend from top to bottom. I'm being very careful not to spread the purple pigment too far. I still want the top of the mountain to be light green, so if I have to remove a little bit of the pigment, I'm just going to use my brush and dip it onto my tissue. I don't use so much water this time. Last time I used way more water. This time I'm using way less water. There are a few trees back there, so I'm just doing those vertical lines with my brush and just very roughly mapping out those trees. So now that this is dry, I'm gonna blend this here as well. I'm just making sure that I leave the parts where the clouds are and not go over those. And now in the meantime, while all of that is drying, we can start with these little trees here. And the reason why I left all of this light is just because the light is hitting them here. And I'm already blending this. And let it dry now again. When everything is dry again, we are going in with this tree a little bit more. Those are actually two trees. So this one is like that, and this one is like that. And now I'm blending all of that. So now we're on to the last layer. I'm just adding in a few finishing touches. I'm just darkening up everything a little bit. That's it. Now we're done with our piece. This landscape might seem a little bit more advanced, but you can do this with a little bit of practice. It's super easy. Just start off with lighter colors and then darken it up more and more as you go along. And don't start with a lot of colors, just do it layer by layer and do more layers instead of less. I used the STAEDTLER watercolor pencils for this landscape because I think they're super vibrant, and I especially love this lighter green tone. I think that it makes the painting come alive. I think the picture makes really nice decor if you want to hang it on your wall. So go ahead and create your own little masterpiece. We'd love to see your results. Share them on Instagram using the hashtag #MyDesignJourney. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this Design Journey art class.